Would you restart after losing the battle for humanity? Make money? Train? Build the strongest party? A man having lost the battle to the 8 evils and 8 virtues, he was presented with the option to start over. Born able to instantly access the Awakener system, giving him a huge advantage before the day of beginnings when the world turned into chaos. He used his knowledge of his past life to monopolize the world, giving him the best possible start. Welcome to our Manhwa recap for today, Past Life Returner, enjoy. In a brutal fight between 2 unknown groups, a man is hiding under rubble, severely wounded. Being at death's doorstep, the man had no other choice but to return back in time to prevent chaos from happening. To rewrite his fate using a mysterious scroll, the man took this chance to relive his life and turn back time to the moment he was born. After accepting the conditions, including the loss of all the abilities that the man gained, he was immediately sent back to February 28, 1985, the exact date of his birth. The man, now a child in his mother's womb, his mother was experiencing a hard labor, putting her life in danger. But the man being born, he was blessed with the skill man who overcomes adversity, along with the overcoming adversity achievement. This skill allowed the man's body to nullify pain and during the duration of the skill. When he is unable to fight, all the user's skills go up a rank. A trait so strong that it can help in turning any situation in the user's favor even if he were to lose consciousness. The system now giving the man a quest, becoming healthy. The man progressed and his stats are now increasing. The man realizes that this might be the reason why the first evil was so strong. We are then introduced to the 8 evils and the 8 virtues. The main difference between them is that the virtues followed the system while the evils rejected them. Their perspective of the system was what separated them, but in reality, all of them were powerful and all of them used their strength for their own gains. In his past life, the man and his group fought against the first evil as well as the other evils and virtues, but losing the battle with the first evil, who was overly familiar with being an awakener. The man was now in the same situation, able to become an early awakener. Because of the man turning back time, murmuring for the status window, he was able to become the first awakened person in the world. Able to access quests as an infant, the man was already a major step ahead of everybody, and for being the first to become an awakened person, the man was rewarded a challenger box, and opening it obtained a deity-level skill called Odin's Wrath. The challenger box was the object that gave the man the ability to time travel back in his past life, but Odin's Wrath bestowed upon him this time around a main skill of the 6th virtue. He recalled the time when it was used on his guild, eliminating half of them in a flick of a finger, and unable to fathom that the power was now his, he knew he could stand a chance against the evils of the future. The man asleep starting to cry, his parents embrace him, and in that moment he was truly determined to save all his loved ones. On a seemingly normal day, as Sun casually strolled the streets and talked to his acquaintance on the phone, screams and chaos erupt from his acquaintance's phone and the call suddenly drops. In that moment, a lady's body hit the ground right in front of him. His surroundings then becoming chaotic as citizens began running away from monsters. Sun, who was scared for his life as he began to run away from the monsters, but a system window appears. The system transporting him and numerous citizens to a place called Testing Site, where all of them had to fight for their survival. The day of beginnings began. As monsters kept pouring through a dimensional rift, selected people who awakened were transported to the testing site, where some spent months battling ferocious monsters and some even spent decades in that traumatizing world. Those who returned from the testing site didn't have the chance to celebrate and process everything completely, because upon returning to their world, they were immediately faced by monsters in a gruesome battle. Even with the help of modern weapons and the awakened, humanity was still pushed back to the edge, forcing them to use their greatest weapon, nukes. However, even with a devastating weapon, humanity still failed, and the 8 virtues and 8 evils watched and indulged themselves as an entire country fell into ruins. During nighttime, when everyone is asleep, Sun sneaks out of bed and completes another quest, thus receiving another reward, making huge leaps of accomplishments for just walking 10 steps. On the 29th day of the month, during Thanksgiving, Sun finally meets his Nuna, Jia, who, in his previous life, went missing during the day of beginnings. With Jia's company, Sun was able to complete yet another quest by saying 10 sentences to someone as an infant. This time, instead of getting a reward, Sunho was given the choice to skip a huge portion of his infancy and childhood. knowing he would love to spend as much time with his parents as possible. Preparing for the day of beginnings needed to begin as soon as possible, so skipping his infancy son who grew up quickly. The year is 1997. A guy wearing a hoodie is brawling with a thug in the middle of a crowd, as the man wearing a hoodie carefully weaved and evaded the thug's attack. The hooded man saw a chance to launch a counterattack that left his opponent unconscious with just one punch. With a commanding presence, the guy wearing a hoodie ordered an older man to bring him stronger opponents. Later on, as he takes off his hoodie and cap, it is revealed that the strong individual is actually Sehun, our main character. With the body of a young adult, Sehun's abilities like strength and perception are better than most pro athletes. Being an awakener also gave Sehun the ability to heal faster than normal people. Being only 13 years old, Sunhoo had already dominated the entirety of Seoul. Due to his desire to level up faster, Sunhoo was able to recall an F-rank dungeon that was sealed in the mountains located in Gyeonggi Province's Hwaseong City. With this in mind, Sunhoo's next goal was to earn money to buy the property and purchase everything that was necessary for his plan to sail smoothly. Sunhoo, knowing the future, earning money was easy, but as he was a teenager, he could not borrow money to earn money. While pondering, he remembered a scene from his past where he was betrayed by his teammates stealing a reward they got from raiding a dungeon. Moving on, with his insignia of destruction, Sunhoo was able to defeat the men with ease. Moments later, Jonathan arrived and healed Sunhoo with his insignia of healing. Sunhoo knew Jonathan to be an A-rank awakener and a traitor by profession before chaos engulfed the world. In his current life, Sunhoo needed someone he could trust to act on his behalf, and Jonathan, being someone who he trusted in the past, recalled his job he had before becoming an awakener. Sunhoo needed Jonathan's help to achieve his goal. With the knowledge he had taken back with him from his previous life, Sunhoo knew exactly how to grab Jonathan's attention as a traitor. Achieving his goal of establishing a connection with Jonathan, Sunhoo quickly put his plan into action, and with his information about the Thai bot and the events moving forward in the trading industry, everything was going according to plan. In 1992, it only took 50 days for the hedge funds to completely destroy the British currency, the UK pound. Since this happened to a relatively huge and strong currency, almost all of the traders were sure that the same would happen to the Thai baht, the currency used in Thailand. Thanks to Sunhoo retaining his memories from his past life, he knew that the Thai baht would not fall so easily. Exchanging emails with the young Jonathan about the trade idea, Jonathan was thrown off his game and the trader started to question his moves. Being offered an absurd proposal by a stranger that he goes independent, Jonathan is out of his wits. While Jonathan's colleagues secured deals from major investors that the Thai baht would fall by May. The young trader was dumbfounded by Sunhoo's information that Thailand's banking system would prevent that and the currency would actually increase substantially. After discussing this possible outcome with his boss, Jonathan was ridiculed for this absurd idea and was advised that if he continued to push through with this foolishness, he should leave his job immediately. Jonathan's colleagues gradually losing all respect for him because of his take on the situation. Jonathan received constant hate until May, where the bot started to rise, shocking him and his colleagues. Jonathan realized that the stranger he had talked with was right and that he could trust him. As panic took over the office Jonathan was working in, he was called by the boss to meet the VIPs of the company to explain the situation, but little did they know that Jonathan, with his newfound trust in a stranger he hadn't met in person, would do the unthinkable. At that very moment, Jonathan quit his job, reminding his boss when he told him to leave. He walked out ready to start his own company, confident about the new path he is about to take. As Jonathan was leaving his office, he sent an email to Sunhoo saying he had quit his job and would accept Sunhoo's unbelievable proposal after meeting in person, to which Sunhoo immediately replied, "Understood. Come to Seoul. Right now." Sunhoo thought to himself about how he wasn't sentimental about the new middle school life he had, and as Sunhoo stood in the hallway, other students were doubting if he was really a middle schooler or a repeater because of his physique. During this, Sunhoo said to himself that it would actually be better if the other students did not approach him, and as the hallways cleared and the students disappeared from sight, Sunhoo was plagued by the memories he had from his previous life. The haunting image of the destroyed city where many lives were unfortunately lost would still follow Sunhoo even in this timeline as he stared off into the distance, lost in thought. Sunhoo's teacher began tearing up as she watched him, quickly running away, wondering what was wrong with her. Jonathan arrives in Seoul and immediately meets up with Sunho. Both characters are shocked. Sunho by Jonathan's looks and Jonathan by how good Sunho's English is. Jonathan, unaware that the kid in front of him was the man who gave Jonathan the information about the Thai bot, he unknowingly complimented the emails he received from Sunho, and to his surprise, he quickly learned that the kid in front of him was responsible for his fortune. After learning the fact that he believed the words of a kid, Jonathan was furious. Seeing the anger in Jonathan's eyes, Sunho felt like he just met the Jonathan he once knew. Thankfully, Sunho had something that would instantly change the foreigner's mind, angrily grabbing the papers Sunho was pulling out. Upon laying his eyes on the documents, Jonathan was shocked by the information Sunho had regarding the role of hedge funds in the trading business. Predicting the surrender of the Thai government after putting up a fight against the hedge funds, Jonathan was in awe of what was presented in front of him. Intimidated by Sunho, Jonathan was asked by the kid if he was worthy of working with him based on everything he had shown him. Jonathan trod lightly so as to not underestimate Sunho because of his age. After a short discussion, Jonathan said he needed time to think, and to honor his request, Sunho gave him until June 3rd to decide. Finding this odd, Jonathan asked why it was set to a specific date. Just then, he realized something so bizarre looking back at the chart Sunho gave him. Jonathan speculated that Sunho had predicted the trend of the trade and when it was happening. Knowing that this is impossible and that to be able to predict the trend down to the date would only be possible if one was a god, Sunho just grinned and told Jonathan that he was truly meeting a god at that moment then. Satisfied with his progress with Jonathan, Sunho left with confidence and told Jonathan that the offer would still stand until June 3rd and that if he didn't decide by then, it would mean the end of their relationship. A few days later, Sunho received an email asking what they should name their company, taking it as he was successful in his endeavor in acquiring Jonathan's assistance. After accepting Sunho's offer, Jonathan regretted not buying into his proposal much earlier, seeing how his predictions were spot on. As they discussed the details of their new venture, Jonathan attempting to come up with a company name utilizing both of their names, Sunho asked that his name not be used for personal reasons. Jonathan revealing his $400,000 investment into the company, asking if Sunho could add more funds, his response left Jonathan stunned. Sunho stating if he had access to that kind of money he would not have needed Jonathan. Jonathan wanted to know why he picked him to be his partner. Sunho blatantly explained that he chose him because of their website and not for some other reason, which led Jonathan to utter a line Sunho had heard him say in his previous life: "It never comes when you desperately ask for it." The same line Jonathan used when he opened the master box he bought using his points. Sunho knew him to be a man who had chosen to give up everything he was rewarded with. Obtaining a powerful skill from a challenger box that he was planning to save up for, but no hope left, decided to open a master box. Jonathan obtaining the skill, Sunho tried to persuade him from exacting revenge. But unable to convince him, his last memory of Jonathan was him walking to what he now knows was his friend's death. After all that, Jonathan and Sunho finalized the documents where Jonathan was shocked at Sunho's 12-year age, but the partnership and their company official. Sunho quickly presented him with another crazy trade: to bet all their money with a 50x leverage, meaning they would be in huge debt if Sunho's trade idea was wrong. Jonathan was shocked to the core with the huge risk, as the $400,000 initial investment would turn into $20 million they would need to pay back. Jonathan put all his trust in Sunho and went all in. A few days later, Jonathan flew back to Seoul looking horrible as he told Sunho his prediction was correct and they made $280 million, a 700x of their initial $400,000. With their last trade being a huge success, Sunho immediately plans ahead and tells Jonathan to trust him completely and go all in once again with their $200 million profit. While Jonathan hesitated with this idea since it was an even bigger risk than last time, Sunho convinced him to trust him completely. In order to prepare for this tremendous risk, Sunho asked Jonathan to fly to Bangkok to gather information on the current status of the Thai baht from the Central Bank of Thailand. With this, Jonathan agreed with Sunho and flew to Bangkok the very next day. While Jonathan was out gathering info, Sunho was out making preparations of his own. We see Sunho participate again in a street fight with a gangster. This time, Sunho breaks his opponent's arms easily, and after a heated argument, we see Sunho in a secluded area surrounded by biker gang members. Thinking he needed an unconventional training method to increase his stats, Sunha barehandedly took on the armed bikers, dominating the entire fight, seeing all of his opponents' openings. Sunha weaved and avoided their attacks and was able to overpower them without using Odin's wrath, which he felt like the system was screaming at him to use. As Sunhu was busy fighting off against the goons, their leader was getting annoyed seeing them lose to him. So taking matters into his own hands, he decided to ram his motorcycle against Sunhu, causing him to fall over in excruciating pain. As he laid on the ground, Sunhu was being beaten to a pulp by his countless opponents, and then during this crisis, it happened. Sunha's skill, Man Who Overcomes Adversity, was activated. Upon the activation of his skill, Man Who Overcomes Adversity, Sunhu's capabilities were raised exponentially from rank F to E. With this, Sunha's perception, strength, dexterity, and even his skill, Odin's Wrath, became stronger. Able to one-shot his opponents and blast the leader's motorcycle to bits, Sunha walked away from the scene revered as a monster by those who watched him. While Sunhu was training his body like usual, assessing the conditions for his skill's activation and how he would use it, he received an overseas phone call from Jonathan saying his predictions about the entire situation were right. Sunhu then revealed that the D-Day for their operation was on July 2nd. On that date, they would go all in with the $200 million. A few days later, Sunhu received an email from his partner saying, "Attack preparation complete." With this, Sunha felt relief since all his efforts were finally bearing fruit, but he still reminded himself that he had a long way to go. As Sunha sat in his classroom, he was anxious about the current situation in the trading industry and how well they were doing. As soon as classes were over, Sunha requested his homeroom teacher to allow him to go home because he felt unwell. Puzzled by how he does not recall his homeroom teacher from his previous life, Sunha brushed it off and went straight home. As soon as Sunhu established a connection with Jonathan, he was shocked about what had already happened moments after they started trading. During that short amount of time, their money had already grown 300x, coming up to $60 billion. After a short up and down exchange in the profits, Sunhu decided to stop and cash it all in to avoid further losses, as the timeline he once knew was being affected by their actions. Jonathan returning to Seoul, telling Sunhu of the $50 billion they made, they were overwhelmed by their progress. With that being said, they start preparing for their next move, and with all their money, it was finally time for Sunhu to secure ownership of the location where the F-rank dungeon was located. Jonathan asking Sunhu if they were also venturing into real estate, Sunhu told Jonathan that from that point on, they would use the money to venture into every possible thing they could make money in. Jonathan, unable to process how $50 billion was not enough, Sunhu made it clear that from that moment on, they will be giving their all into this plan and only rest until all the money in the world was in their grasp. To avoid complications, Sunhu decided that Jonathan would use his share of the money to create multiple companies in different sectors. Elaborating, it needs to be to the point that the people working for the company do not even know who they are actually working for. Sunhu also requested that among all those businesses, he wants one company to be named after his father, Jonil, and have it enter Korea. With this plan in mind, Sunhu and Jonathan moved forward with their goals separately. As Jonathan traveled back to America to recruit trustworthy and hardworking employees and establishing companies to cover their tracks. He started off with the company he once worked at. He barges in telling all his previous co-workers welcome to Jonathan Investment. While everything was going smoothly, Sunha had other things planned in mind. Sunhu rented an office for two reasons: the great security and high-speed internet. Sunhu alone looking as to how to decorate the space. He was moving closer and closer to his goal, as this would be the first outpost. During this time, Jonathan has brought nothing but good news about the ghost companies. Having established a few, he chose 8 of the companies to continue making more, and their plan working so well that the new companies that were being created, not knowing who even ran their company, they just used the provided documents to work. But Sunha also taking into account the almost 1,000 companies they have established as tax havens, it resulted in him having to create and send the funding distribution plan. With all that is happening, Sunha told Jonathan they needed to acquire another company along with their current CEO, Donald Finn. The reason being that the database language Donald Finn and his team created was established as an industry standard in the 1980s. Sunho believes that having Donald Finn on his side would give him an edge in the future against Lee Sun's guild. In the end, Sunho vowed to take away everything the 8 virtues possessed in his past life. After seeing the news about Gold Wish Investment Company's success, Sunho was proud to say that this new big shot entering Korea is merely a ghost company Sunho created. Sunho then leaves the house after a conversation with his mother and goes straight to his office. While inside, Sunho was surrounded by bankers who were clearly flustered by the economic situation they were facing at the moment. Moments after Sunho arrived in his office, Jonathan appeared. Without delay, Sunho immediately went to work and examined the book Jonathan had prepared containing the list of ghost companies they created. Jonathan immediately voices out his concerns about what they are doing. While Sunho agrees that their actions are punishable by law with all the tax evasion. However, he's not really worried about it that much because he can always use money to deal with it. Sunho opening a safe, giving Jonathan a stack of cash, telling him to not use the company's credit cards anymore. He tells him to take a rest and he will see him the next day since they were on vacation. That was when Jonathan noticed Sunho's drawings and thought to himself Sunho was really just a kid. At DP Crump, one of the 4 biggest banks in North America, a member of Jonathan Investments was proposing a seemingly absurd contract that made the heads of the bank hold in their laugh. In the end, the deal was sealed and Jonathan Investments had made another risky investment. Shortly after this, Jonathan tells Sunho that the attack preparation is complete and all the $500 million bets have been made. 2 months later, in October, Sunho paid Jonathan a visit to his office. Frustrated by himself, Jonathan tells Sunho that he's lost track of his losses. With the commotion they stirred in the stock market before, they had to move carefully to avoid being caught. With the current state of Asia's economy, Sunho was certain that Hong Kong would collapse by itself. But Sunho had a plan that both he and Jonathan were going to invest in Hong Kong's stock market to reassure the banks. After putting their plan into action, Sunho and Jonathan instantly faced a dangerous situation. Because of their actions, the Hong Kong stock market started to collapse. After some time, Sunho thought he had stopped the downfall of Hong Kong and preserved the future he remembered. But just as he was about to leave, Jonathan shouted that Sunho was wrong. As the general manager of DP Crump and his colleagues were poking fun at Jonathan Investments' contract, their jaws dropped suddenly as the news announced that the stock market in Hong Kong raised their interest rate by 400%, meaning Jonathan Investments just got the best of them. The reason for Jonathan saying Sunho was wrong was because Sunho only predicted that the interest rate would only go up by 300%. In the end, Hong Kong did the unimaginable and exceeded even Sunho's prediction. With this jackpot, Sunho would amass even more financial power than the people in his original timeline. With his identity still safe and sound, as Jonathan was named the god of investments and confirmed they just knew someone named John Doe held a 51% stake in Jonathan Investments. Jonathan was able to direct the article from knowing too much about them, as if they knew the truth. Sunho and Jonathan would not be 18th and 20th, but 1st and 2nd on the world's billionaire list. Sunho, glad they just dodged a bullet, proceeded to his next plan. Meeting up with Jamie, the former chief investment officer of Wilshire Lands, Sunho hired her on the spot, as he told her the crimes she committed in the past would not be of concern, as her beauty and expertise in real estate have met the requirements. Sunho thought that the crimes she committed was even something he was looking for, along with her beauty and knowledge of the real estate market. Jamie telling Sunho she has not even heard the name of the company she was hired to. Sunho told her Yahello Investments, that is the name of the company you will be the CEO of. With the success Yahello Investment achieved under Jamie's management, Sunho didn't even need to lift a finger or intervene in its progress. As Jamie secured the top dogs in the business industry, her aspirations went beyond real estate, as she knew she could make tons of money from the country's current state. She thanked Sunho for presenting her this great opportunity, as she vowed to make good of the trust he placed in her. Jamie then trying to give her expertise to Sunho regarding the land of the F-rank dungeon. Sunho told Jamie not to cross the line and to always follow the special orders given to her. Since Sunho has decided that he will rarely be involved in Yahello Investments' actions, he has given her the trust that he will fulfill her duties without fail. Sunho thinking making money was definitely needed. The most important thing would ultimately be Korea's dungeons, and many of the special orders she was given were acquiring the properties of these dungeons. As things were going according to plan, Sunhu achieved his goal of purchasing the land on the mountainside. With the progress Sunhu has accomplished, his major focus will now be directed to the location of the dungeon. While Sunhu was waiting for the contractor to arrive, he recalled the experience he had in that very location in his previous life where they were used as pawns by the government to study the dungeons. The contractor arriving, Sunhu told him the details of the construction, and as he finished up, he told him the contractor who would receive this project would be the one who would complete it the fastest, as money did not matter but time did. As night fell, Sunhu's father returned home drunk, devastated by getting fired from his work. The same thing happened in Sunhu's previous life. But this time, the difference is that after getting fired, what Sunhu didn't expect was that his dad would be hired by a company with the same name as his. In his previous life, Sunhu's father was the main reason why he got into the world of finance in the first place. After his first success leading to his overconfidence asking his father for more money, the loss that followed would not just affect him but his father who needed the money back due to being fired. Sunhu, the high schooler exposed to this, learned a lot, and since then, he was fully immersed in finance up until the day of beginnings happened. As the construction began, Sunhu was happy about the progress, deeply trusted the contractor he had hired, and was even happy that his plans were finally taking a solid shape, especially with Jamie's team able to smooth things over for the construction project. The accounting director and judicials affair director of Yahello Investment talking about the various people they must talk to for the construction to proceed smoothly. If things were to progress well, their future plans regarding the Daewoo Group would be a great possibility as well. As the world of finance is still stuck in a great big dilemma, Sunhu sat back going over the changes in the timeline and knowing not everything goes according to plan. But everything so far was as he somewhat predicted. He drops an article with the headline reading Daewoo Group's president arrest warrant approved. We are introduced to Daewoo, one of Korea's biggest conglomerates, a giant in both the foreign and local markets. All the while Sunhu training, Jamie walks up and asks if he knows about the arrest warrant issued to the chairman of the Daewoo Group. She tells him that it was the idea of the two directors to make Daewoo the sacrificial lamb of IMF. Sunhu thinks that Daewoo won't be able to easily escape this problem with Jamie's forward-thinking nature. Jamie telling Sunhu what the Daewoo Group requested to be acquired, she saw it as a possibility. But Sunhu, thinking she still needed time to understand the financial world of South Korea, haven't thought of the politics behind acquiring the Daewoo, essentially putting them in the government's crosshairs. The two directors would not just be acquiring the prestigious name, but the shady business they took part in as well. Sunhu advising her on how to choose the new CEO of the group, he told her to be aggressive in acquiring them, stating their company needed to monopolize the country's current crisis in every industry. Jonathan, arriving in South Korea bombarded by the press, who called him the god of investment, asked what the people should invest in. He told them to invest in fear as he reunited with Sunhu, who teased by him about his interview. The both of them then switching the topics, discussing the financial crisis, Sunhu explaining to Jonathan his plan to acquire the Daewoo Group. He tells Jonathan of the $25 billion he was planning to bring into the country to present during the Daewoo Group purchasing period. Sunhu listening to Jonathan, who was frightened with the sentence they would receive bringing such a large amount of unidentified funds. Sunhu telling him this would be how they made their money legitimate, as the Korean government would gladly do it for them. Jonathan could not believe Sunhu was about to make an entire country money launder for him. Sunhu's plan taking shape, inquiring from Jamie where they currently stood in the Daewoo company's buyout. He told Jamie he would speak with her later, feeling that their dealings with the Daewoo Group were coming to an end, then ordering bruised and bloodied bullies to rise and not disturb him any longer. It was at this point that his homeroom teacher called him, offering advice on how to handle his schoolmates. Sunhu listening to his teacher's advice, confirming to himself she was not the same homeroom teacher of his past life. Focused on the issue now as she was acting strangely towards him, he hired private investigators to look into her life. His teacher named Woo Yeon-hee, who was 24. They found that she exhibited a particular interest in a select few individuals, including Sunhu, and had known him since his elementary days. And upon becoming a teacher, she requested to be his homeroom teacher. There also being a psychiatric report on her, Sunhu seeing no matter what medications she took, her symptoms constantly returned. All of this information, Sunhu concluded that she was awakened, more specifically a rare mind healer. Later that night, he received a call from Jonathan, who reported the successful completion of his orders. Few days prior, they had previously discussed the need for Jonathan to take on a more prominent role in their company. Sunhoo encouraged him not to be afraid and to demonstrate his capabilities to others. He was well aware of Jonathan's formidable abilities, having fought alongside him in their past life, and instructed him to shake the foundation of the Bluestone Company, all in pursuit of acquiring Blue Rock, their affiliated company. A venture he believed held significant potential in order for him to control the financial world from the background. During spring break, Sunhoo journeys to America determined to recruit the individuals responsible for Blue Rock's growth. Not only that, he also meets with a private investigation specialist to assist in the search for a boy named Bobby. Despite the long investigation time and costs, Sunhoo is resolute in his mission to find Bobby, who he believes will become the leader of the 8 evils and 8 virtues. Meanwhile, at the office of Jonathan Investment, Sunhoo discusses his plans with Jonathan, sharing his intention to allocate about $15 billion of their offshore funds to Zillion, a prospective recruit. He then presented Jonathan with a gift, future techniques, and theories regarding investments, proposing that Jonathan publish this information as a book to enhance his credibility. This marks the beginning of a genuine friendship between the two. Upon his return to school, Sunhoo discovers that Woo Yeon-hee is no longer his homeroom teacher after her mother came protesting she was mentally unfit to teach. This postponing his plan to confirm Woo Yeon-hee as an awakener, his priority lied in preparing to enter a dungeon. He ventures into an F-rank dungeon where modern technology and firearms are ineffective, leaving him to rely solely on his sword, unsure if he'll return alive. With a determined expression, he steps into the portal, ready to face the challenges within. Back in his office, Jonathan received an email from Sunhoo, shocked reading it was his will. While inside of the dungeon, Sunhoo fought with all his might against bipedal dog-like monsters. Despite eliminating only 3 of these creatures, he found himself already injured and thoroughly exhausted, realizing they would not be the manageable beasts of his past life. The dungeon he ventured into was of the labyrinthine variety, with its structure shifting every time, making it impossible to predict what awaited in each room. To exit dungeons, unless you had the seal of escape, one had to complete all 3 quests, defeating the boss, exterminating the monsters, and single combat. Sunhoo entered the dungeon knowing from his past life how to defeat the boss. As he advanced, he stumbled upon a dungeon box, a truly unpredictable entity that could either save him or become his next nightmare. Choosing to ignore it due to the high risk, arriving at a door, hoping there were not many monsters inside, he encountered a horde of hounds and was compelled to use his skill, Odin's Fury, which allowed him to imbue lightning into his weapon. While the skill destroyed most of the monsters, the exertion of fighting took its toll on his body, leading to an increasingly perilous situation. The battle having put Sunhoo in an unconscious state, surrounded by the Declans he defeated. He awoke, reading the system, seeing he had been out for 23 hours, slowly recovering due to his man who overcomes adversity skill. He's relieved to find that his arm remains intact, and he glances at the quest, realizing he only needs to kill 4 more Declans to complete it. However, making his way to the next room, he did not just encounter 2 Declans, but the double-headed Declan. He recognizes that his current capabilities aren't good enough to defeat it. In a desperate bid to escape, he flees for his life while the monster relentlessly attacks and pursues him. Driven into a corner, he had no choice but to open the dungeon box and, fortunately, obtained the seal of escape, which grants him the means to exit the dungeon. This experience gives him a first-hand understanding of why the 8 virtues were so eager to exploit the system. He looks at his phone and sees 30 missed calls from Jonathan. He decides to call him later and first calls Woo Yeon-hee to confirm that she didn't get hospitalized. The teacher then arrives at the dungeon site and sees Sunhoo all bandaged up. Sunhoo telling her he was okay and to follow him inside. Woo Yeon-hee, nervous with the mental hospital sign, saying she was not crazy. Sunhoo assured her the hospital was a disguise and he knew she was not crazy, bringing her here to explain something. But seeing her scared demeanor, deciding to be more assertive, he told her she could return and be labeled as crazy or follow him. Woo Yeon-hee makes her decision to follow him, and as she sees his memories, she becomes scared. She can't stop shaking after seeing the Declans from his memories, and he concludes that her ability hasn't developed yet. He explains the day of beginnings to Woo Yeon-hee and hands her a contract, saying she can either join him in the dungeon or go back to her normal life, wanting her to think it over carefully as it was a matter of life and death. In a flashback, Woo Yeon-hee recalled the moments when she became an awakener, seeing her status window, then able to feel the emotions of others. No one believing her, she had to figure it out on her own. And feeling the strong presence from one individual, Sunhoo, she thought he would lead to answers. Back in the present, she looks over the contract and is amazed by the $800,000 annual salary and $2.4 million death and injury compensation payment. Meeting up with Sunhoo, she accepts the contract, thanking him for confirming she was not crazy. However, she kept doubting as to why and if he could give her the amount of money stated on the contract, but Sunha saying she would see once they arrived. Jonathan shocked to see Sunha covered in bandages only for Sunha to brush it off. He nonchalantly introduces Woo Yeonhee to Jonathan, stating his Forbes ranking and saying his nickname, the God of Investment. Woo Yeonhee walking out, unable to believe she was carrying a box full of $160,000. Jonathan questions his actions and he cryptically assures him that he'll find out eventually. They settle for a meal despite Sunha's lukewarm choice due to the closure of Jonathan's favorite restaurant. Their conversation shifts to foreign funds and their involvement in Russia, where Sunha aims to compete with Russia, requesting someone as skilled as Zillian presented with Brian. Their plan involves causing a stir in the sale of Russian government bonds, totaling around $1 billion. Sunha then training Woo Yeonhee, starting with a daunting dagger task highlighting the life-or-death nature of the dungeon. He ordered her to stab him due to her ability Mary's Touch, healing the person she attacks wound, and making his ability become stronger. But it comes with a cost. Woo Yeonhee suffers from the pain because all of it was transferred to her. After 12 hours, she wakes up and seeing that she's okay, telling her to rest and recover, he heads out. In Jeonjil Investment, he visits his father and his father tells him that it would be great if he's interested in the economy of their country while handing him a bank account that he uses to buy stocks. For Sunha, this bank account is the start of his butterfly effect, his talisman. Not only that, this completes his preparations for entering the dungeon once more. Sunha having continued Woo Yeonhee's training, she became familiar with using a crossbow. But Sunha thinking if it would be enough, telling her they would be entering the dungeon tomorrow. Woo Yeonhee asking Sunha how she should prepare, he told her to prepare a will as they would likely not return. In the dungeon, Woo Yeonhee watching Sunha realized the brutal nature of the dungeons, healing him after he was buried under the defeated Declans. She was now aware nothing mattered except surviving, receiving a seal of escape for completing the Declan extermination quest. Sunha pondered how useful it was having a healer, but also an empath, thinking of a man who used the ability in his previous life for evil, Woo Yeonhee sensing his fear, curing it. Sunha letting her know he was fine, told her she did a great job and should never hesitate in using her abilities. They enter the second room and Sunha warns Woo Yeonhee of the formidable double-headed Declan that awaits. Reminding her of his commands, they entered. A single direct strike from the Declan places him in a critical situation. As he struggled to evade, Woo Yeonhee watching, feeling his pain, she remembered his orders to not carelessly use her abilities or attack it with her crossbow. Instead, he told her that if any Declans approached, she needed to run like her life depended on it. As she's running away, severely exhausted, knowing this to be the reason why Sunha did not want her to use her abilities, a system window popping up. She read the single combat quest had been completed, excited with the news as Sunha won, she was unaware of the Declan behind her. With his Man of Adversity ability strengthening him, Sunha displays remarkable prowess by tearing off the head of the elite Declan using his bare hands. He also notices that Woo Yeonhee is still alive and dives into massacring the remaining Declans. Sunha covered in bandages once again as the battle had taken its toll, also experiencing the backlash of his ability. Sunha surprised hearing Woo Yeonhee stating his current state was the best her healing skills could do at this moment. A bit injured, Sunha was impressed she survived by shooting her crossbow in the Declan's eye, then stabbing it like they had trained for. Throughout the week, Sunha and Woo Yeonhee cleared another quest and located all the dungeon boxes so they could fight the boss with the stat increases they acquired, but also coming into contact with curses from the boxes able to be healed by Woo Yeonhee's skills. He was reminded of the first evil as having the ability to remove curses also meant one had the ability to apply curses. And an empath able to enter your mind whenever, working with Woo Yeonhee made him subconsciously uncomfortable. As they reached the boss room, Sunha thinking the dungeon had been cleared by 2 F ranks so far when it required at least 5 E ranks. He told Woo Yeonhee to stick to the plan and survive like she had done until now as they entered. Inside the room, they confront numerous Declans and the white Declan, Anubis, seated on a throne. Sunha recalled people underestimating the dungeon boss as Anubis's strength increases in proportion to the number of normal Declans killed. Sunha activates all of his skills, and utilizing the information to not kill any Declans, he leaped over, going straight for Anubis. But even with all his abilities, he was still too far away. Anubis, with a mocking glance, observes his struggles, but Sunha launches into action as the Declans attacked him. Using his fists and healed by Woo Yeonhee, who was hidden with a horrible stealth item, he slowly creeped up towards Anubis. Woo Yeonhee seeing the reckless nature in Sunha fighting barehanded, Sunha taps into his ability, empowering himself for a short amount of time. As he blew through the remaining Declans, Anubis, the boss, attacks from a distance, Sunha dodging the attack with the duration of his ability running out. Sunho takes Anubis by surprise, throwing a dagger into its chest. Reaching Anubis with mere seconds left, he instructs Woo Yeonhee to activate her Touch of Mary skill, able to eliminate Anubis. But all of his injuries having transferred to Woo Yeonhee, causing her to lose consciousness, making the normal Declans notice her. He quickly jumped back, eliminating the Declans surrounding her, and is quite aware of the impending danger to her life. Determined to save her, he was able to carry her out the dungeon while eliminating the Declans in their path. Able to exit with Woo Yeonhee, she gained the skill, Reviver, keeping a small percentage of health even if the injury was fatal, but would still suffer from the pain of her injuries, Sunho having acquired the powerful skill, Davy's Sword, held by the first evil previously. He had acquired 2 cheat-like abilities from the first evil. Sunho's financial empire also continuing to make monstrous amounts of money, as he told Jonathan his 450% rate of return was beaten by Zillion's 615%. He pushed forward. Woo Yeonhee shocked as Sunho gave her the hospital where the dungeon was and $1.6 million. He knew she had been doing volunteer work with no pay for a while, likely due to her empath abilities. And with a full hospital, she would be able to easily help more individuals. Sunho having then asked her if she would like to continue exploring dungeons, stating she'll need a lot of money to run the hospital. She said yes. Jessica then arrives in South Korea and presents an investment proposal related to Russia, where Sunho advises her to buy all major IT stocks in the Nasdaq market in New York. Meanwhile, Jonathan is actively pursuing his own agenda by discussing the acquisition of a specific technology. He offers $10 million, which is initially declined. He then doubles the offer to $20 million, but the man is still hesitant. After some threatening remarks and passionate statements from Jonathan, the man proposes a 50-50 split in which the man controlled the company. Jonathan in agreement, bringing a smile to his face, they shake their hands, sealing the deal. After the man's departure, Jonathan felt relieved, but Sunho suddenly appeared and praised him. Jonathan stating to Sunho if his forceful nature was necessary. Sunho knew that $20 million and buying shares for a startup was ridiculous. It was even more risky for a company that's value would reach $60 billion in 10 years. Suddenly, a text message arrived saying they had found him. A group of mercenaries, led by Sunho, is tasked with capturing Bobby, a 13-year-old boy charged with murder. Sunho warns them not to underestimate him despite his youth and remember the $1 billion reward upon completion. The operation begins, and the scout calling out Bobby's location, the mercenaries stood in front of the bathroom door. But as it suddenly opened, Bobby knocking out 2 mercenaries with his ability. The other mercenaries joining the fray, firing several shots at him. Acrobatically dodging the first few, he was able to block the bullets being fired, making the mercenaries refer to him as a monster. Sunho, knowing Bobby being able to block bullets would mean he had AC rank ability, likely called Insignia of Pain Absorption. Sunho uses his special ability, Davy's Sword, launching an energy projectile that breaks through Bobby's ability. He follows up with a fierce attack using a knife infused with Odin's Wrath, but is destroyed by Bobby's shield. Bobby then attempts to counter, but Sunho's punch lands square on his face, forcing Bobby to unleash his own formidable ability, Man Who Overcomes Adversity, all while wearing a smug smirk that showed us he was not going to give up anytime soon. With a powerful headbutt, Sunho is sent flying, and the mercenaries immediately open fire on Bobby. He utilizes his teleportation skill to escape, but Sunho is aware that he's still nearby. Sunho instructs the mercenaries to track him down, but they fail, only for Sunho to then realize he was stabbed. The next day, the mercenaries uneasy having discovered one of their dead members. Sunho told the mercenaries he would establish a trust company named after their dead comrade, but for now they had to focus on finding Bobby, saying it would be impossible in the future. Looking at the peculiar information surrounding the life Bobby took, he realized Bobby was hunting pre-awakeners, quickening his growth rate. Calling Jonathan, inquiring into a company they held shares in. He was able to get a list of pre-awakeners, handing them to the mercenary to keep an eye on, then telling him to establish a mercenary group focusing on structure and organization. The mercenary concerned about the cost, Sunho opened a container full of cash, stating it would never be a problem. This concluding Sunho's business in America. On a plane reading a list of the world's assets, he saw 2 companies he owned on the list, getting closer to being the shadow bank that controlled the world. During his flight, an incident involving a man insulting a flight attendant disrupts his thoughts. Sunho being held by the man, putting him unconscious, having learned to precisely use Odin's Wrath. After saving Woo Yeonhee's life, he returned to a smiling Woo Yeonhee who was eager to open the 11 bronze boxes she traded her dungeon clear every time her vitality increased. Sunho was shocked seeing her pull an F-rank item, Dagger of the Clown. The item Woo Yeonhee pulled, once the main weapon of the third virtue, it was able to curse people despite the user not being an empath. But even more powerful once it was upgraded to an S-rank item. Sunha could not believe the possibilities. In a secretive meeting held by Director Park and an Hansel Bakery representative, Director Park was offered $200 million to find a way to sell the Jeonil Group's shares in their company. But Park declining, leaving the meeting, making the representative squirm. Inside his vehicle, pondering the multiple companies approaching him wanting to do the same, he loved the feeling of being able to reject hundreds of millions of dollars, glad he joined Jeonil Investments. But upon receiving a call from Jamie telling him to go home, he wondered why she changed her mind, having told him a few hours ago to return to the office. Jamie blowing off Director Park, disguising her account meeting to meet with Sunhoon, wanting to know how Jeonil's investments were going, having heard some information. She revealed the group had secured a stake in the top 10 business conglomerates, giving them significant control over South Korea's financial sphere. The financial battle raging on his son, who looked at the news, pondering how he would be unable to give his parents the normal high school graduation that he wanted to. Sunha showed to his father the analyst invitation he received from Jonathan Investment Finance Group. To his surprise, his father's eyes welled up with pride as he praised his son and apologized for not supporting him more. But Sunha thanking him, saying being understanding was enough. They hugged, sharing an emotional moment. Following his talk with his dad, Sunho engages in a heartwarming conversation with his mother, who beams with pride at his newfound talents. Later, he seeks out Woo Yeonhee, and by the expression on his face, she can tell that he's genuinely happy. Then asking her if she looked into what he asked, he told her it was no problem with her explorer trait. Days go by, and amidst a windstorm in the heart of a forest, Sunho and Woo Yeonhee arrived at a dungeon. Woo Yeonhee is taken back by the fact that the dungeon is open. But Sunho understood that active awakeners were already present inside, understanding that there's a potential presence of other awakeners. Woo Yeonhee readies herself for whatever may come, and her swift response impresses Sunho. As they waited outside the dungeon, it suddenly reverts to a sealed state, indicating the person inside had met their demise. Once inside, he identifies the presence of insect-type monsters, which terrifies Woo Yeonhee to the point where she struggles to react to a sneak attack. Gazing at the menacing juvenile graph insect, Sunho told her to remain focused, as they would encounter even more horrific monsters and even human-like monsters within other dungeons. Sunho takes down the juvenile graph monster that stands before them in a flash. He was surprised to find that he could defeat the insect monsters with ease, even though he had expected them to be more difficult than the Declans. Explaining to Woo Yeonhee the best way to defeat the juvenile graphs after defeating many. Sunha kicking one over, saying they could not do this in their previous dungeons, it was time for them to loot. Dissecting the monster, pulling out a magic stone, he told the curious Woo Yeonhee it would soon be more precious than gold. Continuing to explore the dungeon, Sunha using his abilities to defeat the numerous juvenile graphs. He sensed himself getting closer to an E-rank hunter, but having the past experience and knowledge of fighting as an A-rank hunter. He was currently much better than the system assessed him at, telling Woo Yeonhee they would complete the dungeon quicker than he expected. Surrounded by over 100 defeated juvenile graph bodies, having fought poisoned for the past 5 days, Woo Yeonhee casting courage on Sunho, assisting him in reorganizing his memories after the poison. Waking her up, having completed all the quests except defeating the boss, they checked the rewards they received. Woo Yeonhee gaining the skills Rage and Confusion. Sunho received Gifted One, giving him a small chance to activate a trait 1 rank higher. Thinking he could get Man who overcame adversity to SS rank, they made their way to the boss's room, having acquired the remaining dungeon boxes. Arriving at pillars that imprisoned adult graphs, Sunho attempts to break the seal, but it resulted in Woo Yeonhee healing his hand due to its rigidness. At that moment, Sunha stated he would use his Man who overcomes adversity skill, going through his other newly acquired skills in the process. He looks at Woo Yeonhee, and an unspoken understanding passes between them, and she knows that he's going to make her suffer some more. Comment below what your favorite part of this Manhwa recap is so far. Turn on all channel post notifications to be notified when the next part drops. For more videos like this, check out the channel, like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.